very special, and I love my dad a lot. I'm proud of him, and that even though he isn't here with us, but he died as a true hero. I miss everything about him.
In the moment that the officers and I had to come see the children, my biggest reaction was, I don't have 7 arms. I have 7 children who just lost their father, and I don't have 7 arms to wrap around them.
I'm Frank Silla, chairman of the Stephen Silla Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Our foundation is committed to delivering mortgage-free homes for Gold Star families and fallen first responder families.
To not have to worry financially is a huge peace of mind. The thought of, what in the world will I possibly do to pay the bills? How will I possibly let the children have a life that feels normal? I don't want them to have to quit their piano lessons or their basketball. I don't want them to feel that we have to move into a little apartment and struggle financially in addition to the emotional weight.
There are over 1,000 families that need our help. Tunnel to Towers is honoring those heroes that risked their lives by providing them with mortgage-free homes.
Those who serve us and then lay down their lives protecting our freedoms and our safety, the least we can do is $11 a month to give them that peace of always knowing there's a home, there's that sanctuary when life feels like it's been tipped upside down, because it has, when you lose a parent in the line of duty, to know you can go home, you can be safe, there's no risk of losing your home. That's a peace of mind that I can't believe you can get for $11 a month.
I'd like to ask you to contribute $11 a month to support their efforts.
Please donate $11 a month by calling 1-844-BRAVEST or visit tunneltotowers.org.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
I'm Noble McIntyre of McIntyre Law, and I've been representing injured Oklahomans and their families for almost 30 years. At our firm, we've handled hundreds of crashes involving semis. They are huge vehicles, and when fully loaded, can weigh as much as 80,000 pounds. Most semi drivers are careful and professional drivers, but some big truck drivers and the companies they drive for are dangerous, and I've personally seen the devastating effects on families. If you or a loved one has been affected by a semi crash, contact us at 405-777-7000 or McIntyreLaw.com. We will fight for you.
Achieve platinum status in the Fuel Rewards program at Shell and save 10 cents per gallon on every fill. Right now, you're less than 5 miles away from your closest Shell, so make a pit stop this afternoon and fill your tank with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Click the screen now to learn more about platinum status and the Fuel Rewards program, or download the Shell app today. Platinum status is earned with 12 fill-ups over 3 months, 10-gallon minimum per fill-up at participating Shell locations. Terms apply. Visit www.fuelrewards.com/status.
It's back to school season for the kiddos, which means it's the perfect time to get your vacay on. Beaches are empty, resorts are quiet, and Cheap Caribbean Vacations has fall vacay deals up to, wait for it, 45% off.
Plus, you can score more site-wide savings and take an extra $50 off your booking now through September 5th. Take this as your sign to pencil in a vacay this fall and turn back to school season into back to beach season.
Go to cheapcaribbean.com to find your next all-inclusive vacay. Offer ends September 5th.
You can achieve platinum status in the Fuel Rewards program at Shell twice as fast by filling up 6 times with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Right now, you're less than 5 miles away from your closest Shell, so make a pit stop this afternoon and fill your tank with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Click the screen now to learn more about platinum status and the Fuel Rewards program, or download the Shell app today. Platinum status is earned with 12 fill-ups over 3 months, 10-gallon minimum per fill-up at participating Shell locations. Terms apply. Visit www.fuelrewards.com/status.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
I listen to a lot of true crime. I listen to it at night. I like the girl talk. It makes me feel alright. I like scary stories in the morning. And I like them at night.
All right. Hello and welcome, all our KLRNradio.com friends and family. As always, I am your co-host for the evening, Bump Stock Ken. And joined, as always, is my wonderful wife and the best little baker in the business over here making cookies tonight. The hostess with the mostest, Bump Stock Barbie.
Yeah, it is a cookies and crime kind of night because we have a family lunch tomorrow, and this is apparently the only thing I'm allowed to bake anymore, thanks to Daniel and the Tiny Tyrant.
Hey.
So.
These cookies she makes, you'll see if you visit Bump Stock Barbie on X.
I shared the recipe there.
She shared the recipe on there, and you'll see some pictures of them. These cookies, I can't explain how good they are, but
cookies and crime tonight.
They are awesome. But anyways, thanks for joining us. This is the Front Porch Forensics podcast. You can join us live on KLRN.com on the X page, on Bump Stock Barbie X, on her Facebook page. I think it's on Spreaker app going on as well. Spreaker is an awesome app. Spreaker is an awesome app. It's free, and all you gotta do is download it, and you can look us up, Front Porch Forensics on there, and it's a fun app, easy to follow along with, and it archives everything so you can listen to it later if you want to. We're also found on anywhere else you can get podcasts, Audible, Spotify, iHeart, whatever. We're pretty easy to find if you look us up, as well as other great KLRN radio shows out there. A lot of those podcasts, you can find them. Just do a search, and I tell you, if there's something out there on KLRN for everybody.
There's a niche for you.
It no matter how weird you may think you are, you're going to find something you like. It's not just all politics. It's not just all serial killers. It's a plethora of things.
Politicians and serial killers are probably not that far removed.
Did someone mention weird? Oh, wait,
Weird.
never mind.
That's the voice of our esteemed programmer, the Rowdy Rick.
Sure.
And as always, he joins us. And I don't know how he finds time to do it because he is the busiest man that I know. We'll get to that at the end of the show. It's his checklist is amazing. So tonight on the Front Porch podcast, we'll be talking about one of the
more fascinating serial killers out there.
He's one of the Mount Rushmore serial killers, I guess.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
as far as big names and everything that he did, and
big name and big in stature as well.
Oh my God, the guy's massive.
So y'all pull up a chair and join us on the porch, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, this is Edmund Kemper tonight.
That's right. Edmund Emil Kemper III, 6'9", 300 pounds of monster.
I said that dude would dwarf you, and you're a big guy.
Yeah, he's a big man.
He makes you look tiny. So, but he actually, his background is incredibly sad too, to me at least.
Yes.
Like there's sympathy there, kind of like how I felt with Jeffrey Dahmer. There is a certain level of sympathy because even as a child, like his parents divorced. I know when he was 9.
Yes, when he was 9.
His mother actually made him sleep in a basement because she was always saying, "You're going to molest your sisters. I don't want you around your sisters or anything." So she kind of shoved him off to the basement, and they didn't really have a lot to do with him in his childhood.
We'll definitely get into that in detail later on because Ed Kemper is probably my favorite. If I know that sounds weird to have a favorite, but so I've got lots of notes on him. So filling 2 hours tonight shouldn't be a problem.
It's just us tonight. We don't have a guest or anything, and I'm also again baking cookies at the same time. So, baby, you're going to be carrying us basically. This
so
entire
I'm at the
episode,
wheel tonight. So, so in saying that, tonight's episode is pretty detailed in some of the crimes, but I'm not going to get too specific. There is some.
Not too graphic.
Not too graphic. You can't really talk about his crimes without getting into some sexual.
There's some kind of gory stuff too.
Yeah.
In there.
So I'll use some clinical words and kind of talk around some stuff just for some with sensitive ears.
Just listener discretion, obviously.
Yeah, but for sure,
not into this kind of stuff, it's probably not the episode for you.
Yeah, as it says at the beginning of the show, viewer discretion or listener discretion is advised. So we'll get into it. Edmund Emil Kemper III was born December 18th, 1948 in Burbank, California, to Clarnell Stage and Edmund Emil Kemper II. He was the middle child, older sister Susan Huey, and a younger sister Annelle Lee. He had a very strained childhood, to say the least. Yeah,
it's rough.
His father, who went by E. Kemper, so double E, to say that he had a hatred for his wife and family would be, you couldn't emphasize how much this is. Edward Jr., which was Edmund's dad, double E, he has said, quote here, that suicide missions in wartime and later the atomic bomb testings were nothing compared to living with her. Talking about Clarnell, the mother. Now,
you've got it pretty good. I mean, you're not wanting to be in wartime with me or anything. So,
right here, Mr. Brass just mentioned, since he's your favorite, would you like to meet him? Actually, yes, I would love to meet Edmund Kemper.
Love to sit down with him and just have a talk.
As weird as it might sound, I'd actually love to meet him. But anyways, back to Clarnell. Clarnell was a severe alcoholic. Some speculate that she may even suffered from borderline personality disorder, but that was never diagnosed with that.
Never officially confirmed that we could find.
Yeah, no confirmations on that.
But just from the behavior, people looking back, hindsight's always 20/20. So it seems like that would be a kind of an appropriate diagnosis.
Right. Well, Clarnell also returned to hatred that Double E had, and her hatred seemed to stem towards all men. And she favored the two daughters over Ed. So Clarnell and Susan and Annelle, all three of them never missed the opportunity to belittle Edmund. Every chance they got, they was always cutting him down, ridiculing him.
So the girls were just taking a page from their mother.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they was torturing. And the girls, the sisters, they learned it from their mother. That's how people learn, So they thought it was normal the way they were treating him. So his childhood from very early on was like this. His first little crush in school was one of his teachers. And I think he was 6 or 7 at this age.
Which for that age and everything, that's pretty normal for young kids,
And he got ridiculed for that. And of course, sisters picking on him. But he was always, like I said, just from the very early age, he was being just tortured.
Subjected to severe emotional abuse from the hands of his mother, his sisters, even other kids at school.
Yeah, well, he was, like I said, getting it at home from his mom and his sisters real bad, constantly. And his first little crush was one of his teachers, and he had already was showing signs of some disturbing behaviors, because the teacher lived close by to him, and he found out, and he would sneak out, which was easy to do because the parents didn't pay no attention to him. And again, this was in the 50s at this point, 60s, I guess. And, 48, so it'd be mid 50s. So he would go and actually hide in the bushes and spy on her, peep through the windows and stuff at her.
Started out as a peeping Tom, basically.
As a little kid. And again, he had no one to teach him right from wrong at this point.
This would indicate a paraphilia too, like we discussed in previous episodes.
Oh yeah, this was definitely the laying the
groundwork
right
there, because from a very early age he had this desire to be around these women who he thought were maternal, nurturing, that kind of stuff, because he never got that from his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And as he grew older, that kind of became way more prevalent.
Yeah.
So definitely we see the paraphilia like we spoke about before.
Mm-hmm.
We see that developing very early with him.
Well, his first mention of it, when the sisters found out, they was teasing him, and the older sister Susan said, "Well, if you like her so much, why don't you just go kiss her?" And Ed's answer to that was, "I couldn't. I'd have to kill her first."
Yeah, I mean, he wanted the attention from women, but he was never taught like how to go about it properly. So his response to this was, they have to be unconscious, they have to be dead.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise they could reject me, or otherwise mock me like I've been mocked my entire life.
I think it was not rejection at this point, but yeah, I think it was going to be the mocking and the abuse. He was afraid of that.
Yeah,
so
I would say so.
So that was early age. His first real signs that we've got recorded of him feeling that way and making statements like that. So Ed's father, Double E, his only interaction with Ed was some physical abuse early on, and basically just ignoring him. He ignored him and just about the whole family. Spent most of his time away or in the basement or just away from the family in general.
He just wasn't connected.
Yeah, definitely disconnected. So when Ed was 9, his parents divorced. Clarnell moved the family, Ed, Susan, and NL, to Helena, Montana. Is it Helena or Helena?
Helena.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I know it's Helena, Georgia, but it's Helena, Alabama. So
yeah.
Helena, Montana, I guess. All right. So Ed claims, this is adult Ed talking in some interviews, he claims that he and his father were close at the time of the divorce. But however, Double E did not try to keep any contact with the family after the divorce whatsoever. In fact, he cut ties with them completely. Yeah. Yeah, he was ready for him to go. So now Ed left California. He's now in Montana. He's completely alone with this alcoholic, abusive mother and these 2 abusive sisters. And I'm sure it was more than the standard sibling abuse that you would get growing up.
Well, if you grow up thinking that it's okay to mistreat people, especially the people in your home, the abuse is going to go a lot further than simple bullying.
Right. Yeah, everybody's got siblings know you're going to pick on each other. And that's natural part of growing up.
Both of us have younger brothers and everything, so we know full well, like, how siblings are with each other.
No, mine was 9 years removed, though, so we were different.
Mine was only less than 2 years.
Yeah, y'all was close. So y'all fought all the time. That's normal.
Oh, I did, like, horrible things to him. Like, everybody will have to remind me about the torture I used to do.
So here you have Bump Stock Barbie talking about the torture and the evil things she done to her brother.
Okay.
I want that on the record to show that she said that I didn't.
Okay, for the record, there was
Consider her words marked, sir.
Thank you. You never know why I might need that.
There was the spoon torture, which after we got home from school and everything with our grandmother, he was smaller than me for a long time, but he's not anymore. Like, if anybody sees pictures of me and my brother, they're like, that's not your little brother. He's bigger than you. But until he got bigger than me, I would like sit on him and tap a spoon on his forehead until he cried.
Yeah. The Chinese had this torture device where they would drop water on that same spot that you're talking about.
Then there was, okay, most people have like the blinds or whatever on their windows in their house where you have that plastic wand that you spin,
Yeah.
you know, to open and close them. I used to take that off, and that's how I'd wake my brother up for school in the morning, as I'd smack him with it. And he would go to school with whelps.
Nice. Y'all pray for me. Y'all know.
You're on my prayer list daily, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. She is a wonderful, wonderful woman, and I trust her completely, and I love her with all of my heart.
You're going to make her make a shopping list if you don't shut up.
This is his alibi.
Yes. I am not suicidal. I am very happy right now. So, unlike her very normal childhood, Ed did not have a good childhood in relationship with his sisters. Now, to put all this going on, which I think is such a crying shame here because of the lost potential, this is very much a nature versus nurture thing, I think, and we'll talk about that later. But Ed, even as 9 years old, his IQ was estimated to be in the 140s. He was genius level IQ as a child and only advanced from there.
Yeah, I want to say average IQ is about 100.
Yeah.
I think Einstein was about 130, close to the 140s.
I thought he was higher than that, but
that's what's considered genius level.
Well, let's say he was genius level at age 9. So he had trouble paying attention in school because of this. He was bored.
Yeah.
Again, this was in the 50s, rolling into the 60s. They didn't, they really didn't look at ADHD, things like that back then. So he was just bored at school. They didn't know how to approach it. He was also extremely quiet and reserved at school as well. And he also had trouble making friends. Children can be cruel, especially they have wooden spoons and plastic rods.
You can touch unless you want it done to you.
So children seriously can be cruel. We know this. And Ed, unfortunately, was a very easy target. Again, he wore glasses. Number one, he wore glasses. He was very tall and big framed as a child. He was
much larger than his
he was
classmates.
far larger and far stronger than any of the boys his age.
And everybody knows anything that makes you different when you're that age, when you're that young, that's a ripe target for bullies.
Yeah, when he was 9, 10 years old, he was being compared to like 13, 14-year-olds in size and stature. So he already stood out. He wasn't very athletically inclined. Even though he did have the size for it, he didn't really have the skill set because he was never taught for it. He had no interest in it. He didn't want to learn. So not only was he being bullied at school, but he was being bullied and ridiculed and tortured at home too, emotionally and mentally.
And at that age, it's kind of your formative years. So all of your emotional responses to the rest of the world that you developed then were completely warped.
Oh yeah, this is his whole time. He should have been learning what's right and wrong, and the only thing he was being fed was the wrong sides.
Wrong, and how to
cope with
deal with your feelings about things that are happening to you, and he was never taught that in a proper, appropriate way.
Right. So now when we go back to when he had mentioned earlier that his father and he were close at the time of the divorce, even though he cut all these ties and everything off. That's him being, his father ignored him. And in Ed's mind, I would think, now he hasn't said this, it's me speculating, compared to the abuse that he was receiving from everyone else, then to him, it would make sense that just being ignored was positive. It was better than the alternative. So he thought his dad must have liked him since he wasn't constantly berating him and
on purpose.
Right. Now Ed's or Double E was physically abusive some. I mentioned that earlier, but it wasn't that constant beratement, that constant
just to get away from the family. And
it wasn't that constant berating and mental and emotional abuse that he was receiving. And I think that's it doesn't say, we're just speculating about the divorce. Is the hatred between him and the wife finally come to a head, and he was gone because I think he wanted out for a long time. I mean, he compared it to wartime. He preferred wartime.
Yeah. I was about to say he compared it to wartime in the sense that he was saying wartime was preferable to living with her.
He said the atomic bomb test was preferable to living with her.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't even go that far.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah. I do have a appreciation for dentists now, though. So this happened when it was 9. Now he's completely separated from anything that he was familiar with. He's thrown into this house, this new place, new school, new environment, new everything. The weather would be different, all of it. And he is stuck with these 3 women that he thinks hates him. And by everything they're showing, apparently they did. So when he turns 10, Ed's behavior starts to turn more darker. It starts to come out. It starts to really show itself. And at age 10, he begins his abuse of animals. Now, I'm sure he abused more animals than what we're going to talk about. That's just kind of normal.
And let's point out that's part of the McDonald triad: arson, bedwetting, and animal abuse, cruelty to animals. This is the triad that we see most commonly in serial killers from a very young age.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about the arson or the bedwetting with him. They don't really go into it. Not that I found.
In all my years of research, I've never found anything about that. But cruelty to animals is always the big one.
Yeah, and he's been pretty open about the stuff he was into, and he hasn't ever mentioned that I'm aware of. But the cruelty to animals, I know, and he shared some stories about some of the things he did. And his first animal that we're aware of, and again, I only know of 2, is the family cat.
Yeah, it usually starts out with an animal you have access to.
Yeah. And well, he spent a lot of time outdoors. So I know when he did later on, when he moved to his grandparents' house, he was shooting anything and everything he could shoot animal-wise.
His grandfather, I think, actually tried to talk to him about, and it just didn't take. It was too late at that point.
Ed gets the family cat, takes it and buries it alive, and then waits 2 weeks. He goes back and digs it up. He then decapitates the cat. He sticks its head on a stick and kind of plays with it. So keep that in mind for later on, because that's some foreshadowing right there.
Yeah, any kind of dismemberment.
Yeah, especially the head on the stick part.
Big deal.
So, and also at this time, again, this was when he was 10. So we're looking at the ages of 10, 11, 12 coming up. Again, very formidable years of learning right and wrong and learning how to cope with things and
how to live in the world as a normal person.
Right. And so he began to play with his sisters. Of course, he would be 10, 11, 12. So the sisters would be anywhere from 9 to 14. I'm not sure their ages exactly. I didn't look it up. But anyways, he was the middle child. He began playing with them. And like I said, he was obsessed with death. So he invented this game that was his favorite game that he called Gas Chamber. And now, again, this is 10, 11-year-old boy. He would ask one of his sisters to...
Everybody needs to stop and actually take that in for a second. For a 9, 10-year-old boy, his favorite game is playing Gas Chamber. That should be raising alarm bells, little red flags going up everywhere for anybody.
Oh, yeah.
But Mom just didn't care.
Oh, yeah. She was too drunk to pay attention.
Yeah. She just genuinely did not care.
Mm-mm. So he would ask one of the sisters to, quote, strap him into a chair, and the other one to pull the lever to turn on the gas. At that point, Edward would choke and writhe around, and he would die a very dramatic death. And he would just lay there pretending to be dead for a while after the game was going on. But this was the game he created. This was a game he wanted to play.
was his favorite game.
It's his favorite game. So that's already leading to a pretty good picture of what he was going on inside his head.
Like I said, I'm Dory at this point. You remember that scene in the movie? She's like, "Whoa, little red flags going up."
Little red flags.
I'm straight up Dory at this point. If that was my child.
Yeah, and then during these same years when he wasn't playing guest chamber, he began a very dark and active fantasy life where he would act out these bizarre sexual acts and all these weird sexual scenarios with his sister's dolls.
That's the paraphilia coming to fruition. Like, these were obviously thoughts that he was already having, and now he starts to act them out.
Yeah.
He's actively role-playing the fantasy at this point, and as we always know, the fantasy at some point is not enough anymore.
Yeah. And this was something, too, that it's not like he would go play with a G.I. Joe man or a Hot Wheel and then go play something else. The games he was wanting to play, this was it.
Were specifically about women in these scenarios,
Yeah.
women, girls. I mean, for any like normal parent, this is highly alarming.
Right.
Like, this is behavior that like you get checked out, you go to the doctor, like, I don't know what's going on. This is concerning. But again, with an abusive, alcoholic mother who just genuinely does not care about the son and prioritizes the daughters, it's no big deal to her.
Yeah.
She doesn't even notice it.
Yeah. So mom of the decade here, Carnell, she did not help matters at all, obviously. Let's step back. She didn't help at all because she was, number one, constantly drinking to the point that she was drinking herself unconscious. If she was awake, there was no sweet tea or there was no water, nothing. She was drinking alcohol. That's what she did. And she was, like I said, vehemently drunk, very, very abusive. And it just got worse and worse as the day went on until she would pass out. Sometimes in the middle of the day, she would already be so gone, she was unconscious. And the family would just go on about their business without her.
So the older sister, I think, took over a lot of like the cooking and cleaning and kind of took on the role of mom, basically, because nobody else was doing it.
Yeah, no one else there was doing it. So I'm assuming that they at least kept the house up a little. I don't know. So this was, like I said, late 50s when all this was happening. Again, I'm not sure how things went in Montana or what kind of area it was in, but I know my parents talking about growing up, it was a time where neighbors paid attention and helped out and was.
Even when I was growing up, I mean, you know, me and my brother, we were the latchkey kids, kind of, but directly across the street, she was a 5th grade teacher, so she was at home at the end of the day. On the other side of our house, on the same side of the street, was another mom, so we were always told, like, okay, you know, this woman, like, if y'all need anything, go to their houses. Mm-hmm. They're actually watching you kids, like, so y'all stay in the yards. And
well, that may be a southern thing. I'm not sure. Maybe in the northern parts, it was more of a mind your own business type thing. I don't know.
Very well could have been. And I think that's just kind of also a generational thing. I mean, older generations are like, our kids can handle themselves. Like,
but either way, he didn't get any. Apparently, him nor the sisters got any type of influence or help from anyone in the area.
No adults seemed to notice any of this that was going on.
So Carnell's response to these games that he was playing was to basically write it off. So he's just a sick pervert, calling him a perverted freak, not questioning why, not saying, hey, what's up, not taking any interest whatsoever about why he's doing this.
Just more verbal and emotional abuse.
Yeah, you're just a freak. Get out of my sight. You know, go away. But she did take into consideration that for her daughter's sake, at least, I guess, is that she had convinced herself that Edmund was danger to the sisters.
That he was molest them. Like, she was convinced that that was.
Yeah, she was.
And she might have been right considering his paraphilias. To our knowledge, he never acted on anything. There's no evidence that he abused either of his sisters. But that would not surprise me either.
When Kemper went up for parole this year, back in July, he mentioned that his sisters touched him and forced him to do things. His older one did.
Well, that would be
Whether
the abuse cycle.
whether that's accurate or not, I don't know, because he didn't say it before until this year.
Right.
So you think he may have said something sooner than that? I don't know.
You would think.
But-
I mean, he's never been shy.
But I
about
know
talking.
I know that he never did anything to the sisters like that. But in response to this fear, justifiably, I guess, she wanted him removed from the area where the sisters were. So while Ed was at school, what they started doing, they was locking him in the basement.
Yeah, they removed him from the main part.
They was locking him in the basement for hours on end, sometimes all day and all night. And then one day, when the sisters was home, Now, one day when Edmund was at school, Carnell got everything he had, which wasn't much, out of his room and put it in the basement and made that his permanent home.
Yeah.
No actual bed, just a mattress laying on the concrete floor. No heating, no nothing like that down in that basement.
No amenities whatsoever
Yeah.
that we would normally consider like the bare essentials.
Yeah, you would be ashamed to have a dog in these this living situation.
100%.
The basement was lit by a single low watt bulb hanging from a string. I'm assuming that's the wire hanging from the wire in the middle of the room,
Right.
which cast
Basically everything you've seen out of a horror movie.
Yeah, it cast these long, deep shadows in all the corners. He had no night lights. He had nothing for comfort down there. And the door locked from the outside. So the only time he was able to leave is when the mother or one of the sisters let him out. Other than that, when he went downstairs, he was locked in.
And this is why I always say that there is a certain part of me that has sympathy for him. Because, I mean, I do think this is... I do think nature does play a part because I think certain people are probably more genetically susceptible to things like this. But at the same time, like this made him into what he is.
Yeah, I don't think there's any nature involved. I think it's completely nurture.
See, that's where you and I would disagree then, because like I said, I think there already has to be something in you that makes you more susceptible to things like this, because a lot of people suffered worse abuse and never turned out this way. But yeah. I mean,
I guess you could say that because he is later on diagnosed with narcissism and antisocial personality disorder, things like that.
Covered in another episode.
Which would be nature, I guess.
That is psychopathy.
Yeah. So you put the high IQ with the psychopathy together. That would be nature, I guess.
Probably. Yeah, that would be the nature part. The abuse and everything would be the nurture. So instead of Kemper becoming this benefit to society because of his high intelligence and everything, it warped him.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he ever knew from a very early age was this violence, this abuse, this mistreatment of other humans.
And that would be the nurture part of it.
That's why I've always said, like, even when we did the nature nurture argument with Zelda and everything, I think it's a combination of both. I don't think it's either or. I think it's both.
I think it's both in every case, really.
It's just a matter of degree.
I think that maybe the one case would be which one is it that's had the Volkswagen?
Ted Bundy.
Ted Bundy. He had a great childhood.
For for the most part. He found out very early that the woman that he thought was his sister was actually his mother, and that his father might actually be his grandfather.
Yeah,
so,
but you compare that to everything others.
yeah,
That's
I mean,
nothing compared to others.
It's traumatic, but
I mean,
it's
that's
not the severe abuse.
I mean, I
It's
see
not-
that all the time in Walker County. So I mean, that's not a big that's completely normal in Tennessee. You know what I'm saying? So it's not something that's not that's not big enough. I don't
Ted
think.
Bundy, I think, is one that is way more nature.
Have we done
than
Ted
nurture.
Bundy on this show yet?
Not yet.
We got to
We
do.
will
We'll do
get
Ted Bundy later on. So, anyways, going back to the basement, we got on a little tangent there. Going back to the basement, Ed later on as an adult, because that's something else. What Ed does is he loves to talk, and he has done hundreds of these interviews with FBI agents and all this kind of stuff.
John Douglas and Robert Ressler, the basically the founding fathers, I guess, of criminal psychology and the behavioral analysis thing at the FBI. He was one of the first ones that they went to.
Yeah.
And he's very, very open. He's not shy about talking about anything.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, because definitely we're going to touch on that on the next hour. But he tells one of the FBI profilers, and it very well could have been one of them too. I don't have the name of the profiler, that while he was in this basement, the only source of light he had was that dim bulb and the flame from the furnace in the basement. I don't know if it was a coal furnace or a gas furnace back then. I'm not sure, but it had an open flame that you could see through the grate.
I would assume it's obviously for heating.
Well, of course it's for heating, but so he said he had nothing to occupy his time, so he would just lay there and stare into that fire. And this will just quote was, "I would lie there and stare into the flame of the furnace for hours on end." He said, quote, "I saw the face of the devil for the first time in those flames."
So we've got hallucinations and delusions.
Well, also,
at an early age,
like I
too.
said, he said for the first time as well, which would kind of lead you to assume that he sees this somewhere else later on. But yeah, could you imagine being that young with that kind of torment, and all your free time, you just lay there and
I remember being
in your own
that
head,
age,
you know?
And we had the basement and everything in our house. And like my mom or dad would tell us, like, "Hey, we left something in the car. We go downstairs and get it." And my brother and I would like almost be in tears, like, because we didn't want to go into the basement because it was so scary.
Right.
And that's where they relegated this child to. That's where they put him.
Yeah, in his most formidable years.
Like, he's very young. He's that age. Like, everybody has that memory of being afraid of the dark, or being afraid of a basement or an attic or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's where you put this child. Like,
I think this is kind of why he became a friend of the dark too. I mean, he just becomes so used to it, you know?
it's all he knew.
Yeah. Well, that was his comfort. He would be in this horrible situation in the basement, but at least he wasn't being.
If I say his sisters weren't there, his mother wasn't there, they weren't abusing him.
His only relief from them was this cold, isolated, dark
that was
basement.
his reprieve, yeah. And that just, I keep saying, that I have all this sympathy for him. And again, this is why. Like, I do not condone at all what he did.
No.
But at the same time, like,
Mr. Brass would like to remind you that you can't say sympathy without saying simp.
Can't say sympathy without saying simp. Yeah. That's true, I guess.
yeah.
But, yeah, it's like, I don't know. I guess sympathy might be the right word. Would empathy be a better word?
No, empathy is where you can relate to him on stuff like this, but I can't relate to how he turned out because of it. I can feel sorry for his circumstances, and I can understand that that's what caused everything.
Yeah.
But I cannot get past how
it would stop short
it
from
him.
empathy.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, I feel incredibly sorry for the child and what he went through.
See that?
No child should ever have to experience that, not from the people who were supposed to love you the most.
I'm making a note now, the difference between sympathy and empathy. This is a learning experience for me as I go. So, now during the days, a lot of times Ed would be released from the basement. Sometimes the door wasn't even locked. So he did have access to the house sometimes.
He was allowed to like go to school and do stuff.
Well,
like
yeah,
that.
he was allowed to go to school. He was allowed to go to the bathroom.
I was gonna say, was he the one that wasn't allowed to shower or anything though?
No, there's no record of none of that. So he had access. He had access to things, and of course, he could come upstairs and get his meals, but most times he had to eat downstairs.
Yeah.
So he had access to the house sometimes, and he
was
made
isolated.
He made the best of those moments when he had access to the house. Because what he would do is he would go into his sister's bedrooms, and he would steal their dolls. And he would take the dolls back into his room and he'd hide them so he could play with them later. And again, this is the way he plays. He would decapitate and dismember the dolls before he would perform these elaborate funeral rites for them.
There's already the obsession with death.
Oh, yeah, definitely deception of the guest. And again, the decapitation, dismemberment, and then the funeral rites and the things that he would do with the dolls. Again, that's some more foreshadowing that's coming about too. And so this is what he said about the dolls. Again, in one of these later interviews, this is quote on answer why he took the dolls. He says, this is Edmund Kemper. I remember there was actually a sexual thrill. You hear that little pop and pull their heads off, and you hold them up by their hair, whipping their heads off their body, still sitting there. He said, that would get me off.
Yeah, this again goes back to the paraphilia, because paraphilia always has that sexual component to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this was something that started in him from a very early age. Which that's how it usually goes between the ages of like 4 and 6 is usually if somebody's going to develop a paraphilia, that's when it starts. Like Jerry Brudos is an example of this too.
Well, the 4 to 6 is when he started having his little crush on his teachers, and they ridiculed him for it. So that kind of set it in motion right there. That was his first realization.
It kind of made it almost a forbidden thing for him. So obviously that's going to lead to, okay, killing her is forbidden too. And if I kiss her, I have to kill her. So that's where the sexual component starts to develop.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Brass, women definitely have a tendency to lose their head when they're around Ed. That's just kind of the way he rolled, I guess. So
we'll get to soon.
Mentioning that about the dolls and stuff, and bringing up the mom again, we was giving her a lot of crap earlier about being mom of the decade, and then so when she did move him downstairs away from his sisters, do you think that was a legit concern that she saw, or do you think that just led to it getting worse?
I think that there probably was some concern there. She probably saw signs, but her reaction to it definitely not appropriate, I think.
So kind of
a combination.
Yeah, because there was some concern, obviously, that was legit, seemingly so.
I mean, she's a severe alcoholic, so the cognitive thought is damaged there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that he was really ever a threat to his own sisters at this point.
Probably not during childhood, but I can guarantee you he probably did fantasize.
Oh, I'm sure, especially with what he does later. But her locking him in the basement and moving him out I think that's probably a catalyst on him getting worse.
Yeah,
but I don't know that
he's isolated.
But I don't know that if let's say she didn't do that, I don't know that it would have made any difference either.
Yeah, and again, this is all speculation on our part, but I agree with you. Like, if he wasn't separated, that fantasy is eventually, as we always know, the fantasy is eventually never enough. They will act on it.
Right.
And I mean, that's exactly how this case unfolded. So,
Yeah. So, again, this was ages really 9 to 13 at this point that we're about to talk about, where he was moved to the basement. He was ridiculed constantly, school and home. There was no safe space for him.
except for the basement when he was alone.
Yeah, the only time he was safe, quote unquote, to be away from them was in this basement where his fantasies just rolled in his head over and over and over and over and over.
That's the only reprieve he got from
Yeah.
abuse.
There was nothing to distract him from those thoughts while he was in the basement.
There was nobody to explain to him that this is not normal. It's how you're living.
Exactly. So at age 13, this is where we see Ed make his next kill that we know of. I'm sure there was probably some things that that wasn't listed, but animal wise. So Ed kills the second family cat. So when the cat went missing, the cat had been missing for a few days, and Clarnell, the mom, finally found parts of the cat's dismembered body in Ed's room. He had this little closet down there, and that's where they found all these parts of the cat. It doesn't say how he killed it or anything like that, just that we know it's dismembered, and it was left in this closet, and the mom finds it.
You gotta know that's still jarring. I mean, even if she's an alcoholic, she's like the worst mother ever at this point. That is still extremely jarring to find.
Mm-hmm. So when she confronts him about the cat and what happened and why he did all this, his answer was very calm. I did it because the cat liked my sisters more than me. That was his justification that he gave the mom on why he killed and dismembered the cat.
That right there could be foreshadowing too.
I think that's extremely foreshadowing.
That reasoning right there, that already shows who the actual target of his rage, his anger, his hurt. That shows who his targets actually are.
Yeah, he just told us what his number one target is. It's those that likes his sisters more than me. Those that hate me.
And that was his mother.
That was the mom, dear old mom. Which is kind of the cliche of you see people talk about, mom's always the root of the problems when it comes to psychiatric problems.
Freudian school of thought that, mom either loved you too much or not enough.
Yeah.
Always mom.
Always mom's fault. And in this case, hey.
In this case, it's 100% applicable.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just absolutely true.
That's a major foreshadowing right there. Not to give away the ending. So we're already 55 minutes in the show, and I'm still talking about him as a kid.
So go into when he got sent to his grandparents' house.
Oh, we're getting there. We're rolling into it now. So moving on. Now we got Ed at age 14. He discovers that dear old dad, Double E, has remarried. He's still living in California, and he has a new wife and a new son that he adopted. So, Double E.
This kind of informs Ed that he's kind of worthless.
Ed remarried and adopted his wife's teenage son. So you're looking at a kid roughly
the same
age range. And apparently Double E is happy with this new family, living the life that Ed wanted, getting the attention that Ed craved, that he desired.
He wanted the approval from his parents. He wanted to be loved by his parents. And, this man left him with an abusive woman and then decided, oh, well, I like this kid better than you.
Exactly.
Which is how Ed is going to see it.
Exactly how he sees it. So Ed, being 14 and looking like a grown adult, he leaves Montana and runs away to California. And after a few days of being gone, he arrives unanswered, uninvited to his dad's doorstep of the Double E Kemper home. And they're living in Los Angeles at this point. So I'm sure that was a surprise for Double E and a new family. Now, there's some mystery here. I don't want to speculate too much on why this decision was made, but Double E decided to allow Ed to stay with them. He didn't immediately send him back to Montana.
So I think it was probably actually a little bit of sympathy and empathy because, okay, you know, Double E knows exactly how this woman is.
Yeah.
And knows how miserable it would be living with her. So he probably had some sympathy for his firstborn son and was like, okay, we'll permit you to come stay with us.
Yeah. And this right here, I think personally to me is probably the saddest moment.
Yeah.
So
there was this chance to have a fairly normal life. At this point, I don't know if it would be enough to change anything that happened because that paraphilia, the cruelty to animals, all of that had already started. So I don't know if that would be quite enough to change the trajectory of everything that has happened after this.
So here's Ed, 14 years old. He's just moved halfway across the country on his own to get away from what he had. He's got the chance to have a family with a brother and a mom that he thinks can love him and a dad that's going to love him too. And he's been accepted into this house. Well, very soon after he moves in, Ed's new stepmom said that talks to Double E and says that Ed has to go, claiming that Ed gave her migraines was the explanation given. And of course, just speculate on the discussions here. But the truth comes out later. We learn from her and Double E that what creeped her out, and this is the sad part, is that Ed would follow her around the house all the time. And that what spooked her was that he would constantly close all the drapes and the curtains and the blinds, and he would turn lights out, saying that it was just too bright.
He's mimicking the only thing he ever knew. He was back down in the basement where he felt safe.
His only safe place was that dark basement, and now he's trying to make his new house dark again as well.
He's trying, and again, what makes it so sad is he's trying to do this because he wants to feel safe with this woman.
Yeah,
that he thinks can give him the love that he's been missing.
Yeah. So this woman, there's no reports at all of her being abusive to him whatsoever. He's following her around like a little puppy is what he's doing.
And he's trying to mimic the
turning
environment that he felt safe in
by turning the lights and whatnot off. And his reward for that, or what he gets out of that, is being rejected and sent off again.
Yeah, and seen as weird, as creepy,
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that in and of itself is, I guess, kind of a form of emotional abuse, just not as severe as what he was already dealing with.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't in your face, but I think it was crushing. Absolutely crushing. Because I don't think he knew what he was doing anything wrong, you know.
And I mean, okay, me as a woman, as a mom, I would find that a little bit creepy too. I just would.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be very strange to me. And I hate that for him. I hate that for him so much. But like I said, even had she understood what he had been through, had she tried to kind of correct that, I'm not entirely sure that would have prevented anything that happened.
No. Yeah,
I think it was too far gone at that point.
Very well could have. If he would have stayed, his actions very well could have made them his first victims.
So this is when Dad sends him off to the grandparents.
Yes. So in response to this, quote unquote, migraines, they send Edmund off to the grandparents' house in Norfolk, California. Edmund moves in with Edmund Emil Kemper Sr., old number one, and Grandma Maud Matilda Kemper. Her maiden name was Huey, so I'm assuming that's where Susan got her middle name, Huey. So Edmund Kemper Sr., from everything I've read, he didn't seem to be a very loud, boisterous, mean man necessarily.
No, I mean, you kind of get the impression he was kind of one of those stoic men.
Yeah.
You know, you get that very kind of quiet, reserved type of man that was very, very common then.
Now, he tried to bond with Ed, but with what he knew, which was hunting and outdoors. So he would take Edmund whenever they got a chance to spend time together. He would take him out and gave Ed a .22 rifle.
Yeah, got him his first gun.
Yeah, well, he's letting him use it, and they would go target shooting. They would go hunting, like some birds, things like that. Well, Ed got to where he was taking the rifle out and shooting birds and squirrels and
just other small animals he could find, anything really.
Cats, neighbors, animals, all the anything he could shoot, he was out there shooting it. And Ed Sr. got concerned and he took the gun away. And now, of course, taking it away was basically just putting it on the shelf and saying, don't touch it.
Right.
So
it wasn't locked up or anything. It just,
again, this was 1964 at this point.
And they seemingly had no idea of what had led up to all of this, like his childhood with his mother, the issues with, stepmom and his bio dad.
Well, this was the biological dad's father and everything there in California. I'm sure they knew that,
at least with the stepmom,
Clarnell was a drunkard and nuts, because he's going to talk to his parents, talk about how nuts she is. But I don't think anybody, including them, knew the levels of abuse that was going on.
And I don't think Ed ever told anybody about that until, well after his crimes.
However, I don't think they necessarily would have considered it abuse either, because of dear old Maud, Granny. So, here's what Ed says. Ed, he still despised living with his grandparents, even though it was a better situation than what he had. He despised it. At this point, he was so broken from the mom and the sisters, and then being rejected by his dad again.
And they were strict too. I mean, he had chores, he had rules that he had to follow. He had never had anything like that before.
Yeah, he had rules, he had things like that. But this is what he says. He says about his grandfather, he said he was senile and even called him an old fool. Is what Ed said of what Edmund said of Ed Sr. But when he talked about Maud, the grandmother, this is his quote. Give you an idea of what kind of woman she was. It says, quote, "She thought she had more balls than any man and constantly emasculated me and my grandfather to prove it. I could never please her. It was like being in jail. I became a walking time bomb, and finally I blew up."
Yeah, that morning.
Well, this was quote again later on one of the interviews, one of the many interviews he did. That's his quote about the grandmother and the grandfather. So one morning, it was August the 27th of 1964.
Right after breakfast, wasn't it?
Him and his grandmother had another big argument, and she was in the kitchen. So Ed walks out of the kitchen and gets the rifle. He walks back into the kitchen and he shoots the grandmother 3 times in the back of the head.
He's 14 or 15 at this time.
He's 15 years old at this time.
Yeah,
he's 15 with his first kill, and that was his paternal grandmother, Maud M. Huey Kemper. Shot her 3 times in the back of the head with a .22 rifle at basically point blank range.
Right there in the kitchen with her.
There are some reports that he later on, as the day went on, stabbed the corpse. But
which
that's
would kind of make sense considering what he did to his own mother.
Yeah, but there's some conflicting accounts about that, so I'm not sure if that happened or not.
Confirm that.
But it makes sense.
Yeah.
So Ed Kemper was coming home that day later on, again August 27th. And Ed sees grandfather coming up the driveway. He parks his car and he starts into the house. So Ed, out of the kindness of his heart,
Yeah. So he didn't
walks
want
out
his grandfather
front
to
with the
suffer.
rifle. I'm sure Granddad sees Ed with the rifle and stops, and Ed shoots him in the driveway, shoots him dead right there. And Ed's words was he didn't want him to suffer seeing his grandmother's body in that state.
He also said later on that he killed his grandmother, quote unquote, to see what it felt like.
Yeah, I mean that was some of the other things that he had done. And again,
so,
like I said,
one, he wanted to, but two, that was just kind of a means to stop what he saw as his own suffering.
well, I think that the morning of when he finally blew up is like an uncontrollable shooting.
Yeah.
I think that he probably did dream about it and fantasize about it for a long time before he actually did it. And that's what he meant by he wanted to know what it felt like.
Yeah.
But then he said that he killed the grandfather because he didn't want him to see his wife laying there dead.
Yeah, didn't want him to suffer that kind of mental anguish of his wife being dead. And
so in a twisted way, he had some compassion for his grandfather there. And again, this man, I'm sure he was flawed. He's the only one that showed him any kindness.
and that's probably the only time Ed ever showed any of his victims any kind of compassion.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a warped kind of compassion, but
definitely warped. But again, he killed him out of compassion to save him from seeing his wife dead. So now this is one of the things I like about where we're getting into Ed's life here. Again, this was 15 years old. He gets arrested, obviously. The family finds out about what's happened. So Ed goes to let me find the I got to turn my page. I'm sorry. So he goes to a maximum security facility there in California called Atascadero. I don't know how to pronounce it. Atascadero.
I would say Atascadero.
So, anyway,
like that, yeah.
It's a state hospital. It's basically a mental hospital for maximum security criminals. And it wasn't a prison. Like I said, it was definitely a hospital.
He was still a juvenile at that time, though. So I think it was mostly other juveniles.
Could be. I mean,
I would assume so because that's still a thing today.
Well, like I said, this is 64, so I'm assuming. I don't know. I didn't look that up. But anyways, either way, juvenile or not, it was maximum security. And the doctors there subjected him to years of various tests and interviews and those kind of things.
A battery of psychological tests.
Yeah.
So.
And this is where Ed earned his genius label. From what I read, they put his IQ at least 145.
Which is pretty high.
And I said they gave him that genius label there. But he also earned the label of being a sociopath as well.
And as we talked about in the sociopath versus psychopath and what kind of the levels of this.
Yep.
We understand like a sociopath and psychopath, these are outdated psychological terms, but they essentially mean the same thing. He basically had no empathy. His capacity to feel any kind of real human emotion was just not there.
Mm-hmm.
He could not connect to other humans like most of us do.
Right. Yeah. His diagnosis was number one, genius. Number two, why did I say that word again?
Psychiatric?
No.
Psychopath.
Psychopathic tendencies.
Yeah.
And his actual one was a paranoid schizophrenic. Is what they deemed him there, diagnosed him as there.
Well, that kind of makes sense to me because, this boy, everybody hated him. So why wouldn't he just naturally develop this idea that everybody else hated him and was out to get him too?
But that was his official diagnosis when he was 15 in that hospital. So, but again, Ed spends 6 years in this hospital
and
in this institution.
In this institution, this goes to how cunning
this
the
is why
sociopath and psychopath.
I'm going to say this is going to sound bad, but this is why I love him. So,
like, this is how cunning they actually are. Like this boy, Like, not even a man yet. He's 15 years old at the time that he killed his
Between
grandparents.
15 and 21 at this point.
Yes, when he was in the
this.
institution, like the rest of his teenage years was spent here. He got in so good with these actual psychiatrists, these doctors.
Oh yeah, multiple, not just
Yes,
one, multiple.
This was like all of the doctors that he interacted with.
Professionals.
Yes,
they
these
went to
were the
college.
people that were supposed to be able to recognize these signs. He was able to successfully manipulate them to the point that they're giving him basically the questionnaires that they give all the other inmates at this point. So he not only knows the questions that they're asking, but he now knows what they're looking for as an answer.
Oh, yeah. And not only that, which I think is even better, is that these doctors actually let him assist interviewing the other inmates.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, he set in on these supposedly like classified or, privacy protected interviews with these other inmates.
Yeah, so they was treating him like a doctor himself, basically.
Or at least like an intern, maybe.
Yeah, here's the thing, is like, if they're letting him interview, he was conducting interviews to other inmates. I'm sure the doctor was setting in on this as well. I don't think even he could talk him into doing it alone, but he was conducting interviews with these other inmates, which means that he had their respect as a peer.
Yes.
For these doctors.
100%.
I love that.
I mean, this is as a very young person.
Oh, yeah.
He was able to fool all of these professionals, these psychiatric professionals.
Yep.
They gave him that level of respect.
Oh, yeah. And this was so, and ultimately in 1969, Ed does such a good job at this that those very same doctors that said that he was a genius and paranoid schizophrenic, by 1969, they deemed him not a typical psychopath. And they released him into the care of his mother.
Yeah, right back into the person who made him what he was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, like psychopathy, there's no cure for that. You don't grow out of it. Like, you don't just, one day you're a psychopath and one day you're not.
I'm much better now.
Yeah. That's like he's saying that. Like, I'm completely fine.
You did that a little too well. I'm just
the crazy thing is, I noticed, and they don't really touch on it, but I did. To me, it's blaring. They released him back to his mother in Montana. The dad, who's still in California, they did not release him back. So that tells me that, again, the dad, the stepmom, didn't want anything to do with it.
But there was, especially back in that day and age, where everybody, even the professionals, saw it, mom was always best.
Well, it could be a legal thing too. She had legal custody.
True.
And maybe that hadn't changed. But again,
dad didn't seem to fight for custody for him either.
But then again, he's 21 at this time. They know that he can't just go out being on his own. They recognize the danger.
I said that was part of his release. The conditions of his release was that he had to go back to his mother.
Yeah, so I wonder if they picked the mother because of the legal guardianship that she had during the time or something.
Yeah, that's something we speculate about
because
we don't know for sure what the decision-making process there was.
In my mind, if I got somebody like that and I'm in the state of California and I want to release him, I'd want to keep him closer.
Yeah.
So I would immediately go to the father and say, hey, we want to keep him in state so we can keep an eye on him.
I say these are the conditions of his release.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to kind of monitor this.
So I'm going to make an assumption here, which I normally don't do, but I think that the dad probably said no. He didn't want that back in his house.
I mean, him and his current wife and everything, it was too much for them and they declined.
And apparently he had a good thing going with the new wife and son. And the dad lives on, I mean, we know at this point he's still alive because he doesn't die until the 80s. So we know that might have been an option, but either way, he winds up back to the mother of the decade here.
Yeah.
Clarnell. So while back with his mother, again, 21 years old at this point, back in Montana, Ed discovered just more of this same abuse. But at a different level now. The sisters at this point seem to be out of the picture. I don't know if they've moved out or they're in college.
Both of them have moved out.
That's maybe married, moved out in college or whatever, but they don't seem to be in the home anymore. It's just him and Mommy Dearest.
Yeah.
And at this point, Clarnell's alcoholism had gotten so much worse. She would regularly drink from the moment she woke up till she was unconscious every single day.
Hey, don't judge. There was too much blood in their alcohol stream.
Well, hey, it's maybe those winters up in Montana, you got to stay warm somehow, you know. But Ed later on said that many times his mother, you know, she would be passed out on the couch or in her bed. Usually she made it to her bed, but he would stand beside her and look at her and fantasize about killing her. He said he'd done this multiple times, just staring at her, to the point that he would leave the house when these urges would take, just to get away from it. He didn't want to act on what he was feeling because he knew it was wrong. So he would leave the house and he would just get in his car and he'd just be driving around to get away from that temptation, I guess, of his mother laying
Mom, she worked at the college library nearby, right?
there. I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So he actually got a parking pass.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah, he
So
had a
that's
parking
how-
pass on the windshield of the car.
That's why he was called the co-ed killer.
Do you
because
remember the college it was?
No,
I don't
can't
either.
remember the name.
But the college was close, and the mom worked there. I don't know if she cleaned or what
I think
she
she
did.
was a librarian or worked in the library in
Yeah.
some capacity. But that's how he got the parking pass that he did, and kind of how we got the nickname the co-ed killer.
Yeah, well, he got the co-ed killer because of his targets, and that was
they
easy.
were college girls. And
So what he would do is he would get in his car and he would drive around. Again, it had that sticker on the window that comes into play later. But he would go out, he would drive around, and eventually he started going to this bar in the area that was frequented by the police.
I say it was the cop hangout, basically.
Yeah, it was known in the town as that's where the cops go after their shifts and stuff to decompress and get some beers.
Wine, yeah.
And he would go there so often, and of course he stood out in the crowd. And the cops he and the police began to make a friendship together. They started bonding, and he even talked about wanting to become a cop as well.
He went out for it, but the training and everything, because of his size, he was kind of ruled out for it.
Yeah, he said it wasn't good. 6'9" at this point, almost 300 pounds. They just said that was too much of a target, basically.
And
So
that, or he couldn't move very quickly.
yeah, I mean,
there's a lot.
again,
of
he wasn't
factors
very extremely strong, but wasn't very athletic. You know,
Yeah.
there's a difference. You know, and to talk about how strong he was, here's something that he did. He would take 100-pound bags of cement, concrete, quickcrete, you know, and he would stand and hold one in each hand straight out at shoulder level and just hold those bags of concrete out. 100 pounds.
I mean, that's a feat for anybody, really.
Yeah, that's ridiculous strong right there. And it's not, I mean, that's just purebred strong. There ain't nothing, no gymnasium or nothing like that.
Natural biological strength that he
So this
has.
guy was 6'9", 300 pounds, and could do that. He was literally a physical monster.
He wasn't able to.
It looks like here they done some research is that she worked at the University of California.
Okay.
So I guess at this point they were back in California.
I mean, California. I mean, they're on that Pacific coast. That's where we see so many serial killers, and I don't know what it is about that regional area, but it just seems to like breed them.
Right.
I mean, you got the people from like the Washington, the Oregon, the Utah, like all those places. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. That here it is exactly. University of California, the Santa Cruz County. So that's where they were. So anyways, so he had this pass to get on campus because his mom used a car too. She would come home.
Yeah,
berate
that
him.
window decal, or you hang it up in your mirror or something like that.
She would, I think back then they were window stickers. She would come home, berate him, pass out, and he would think, I'm going to kill her. So he would get in the car and he'd leave. So he found these police officers. He started making friends with them to the point that they was telling him parts of their cases, some of the things that they had seen. He was always interested in the crime scenes and the death of the people that they would find.
That and the procedural stuff too that
Yeah.
they were telling him. Like he
So-
kind of knew how to.
Oh yeah, that's
How to handle things.
He would talk to them and actually find out how they were looking
What
for.
evidence they're looking for.
Yeah, what evidence they was looking for, what their mindset was when they was looking for a criminal. I mean, he was working the police is what he's doing at this point.
Just the same way he worked the psychiatrists and the doctors when he was in the juvenile facility.
Yeah, he was absolutely. I think he wasn't making friends so much as he was working them at this point. He was
100%.
he was building
manipulating.
he was building up for these crimes.
He knew that he wasn't. That fantasy was not going to be enough. Eventually, he knew that he was going to eventually kill.
Yeah,
I think that he was fully aware of this.
Mr. Brass here says, do you think if he had just killed his mom in the beginning would have been enough for him? I'm going to touch on that at the end.
That's actually something we've talked in depth about.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that.
So when he wasn't at the bar, he would drive around at night. He would drive around in the evenings. It was always after her shift. And again, this was at this point, late 60s, 70s, early 70s. And hitchhiking was completely normal then.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely normal.
That was kind of the preferred mode of transportation for so many young people back then.
Yeah.
And that's the reason this stereotype of hitchhikers, like, you don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, we know to tell our kids now, do not accept rides from strangers.
Yeah,
And
completely.
it's because of this.
Completely ruined it for all the rest of us. I mean, the rest of them. So you got to be careful now.
Oh, I don't know. If I were ever to do it, I'm going to use that old line, like, the odds of 2 serial killers being in the same car is astronomical.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried.
So again, he was driving around. He had a 4-door car. I don't remember the make. I knew at one point what make and model it was. And it was kind of one that the detectives at the time used pretty regular in the police as well, because he always thought that was kind of cool. But I forget what kind of car it was. Tan in color with brown interior. I remember
Which was
that.
popular during those years because, I mean, Ted Bundy's Volkswagen was tan.
Yeah, it's
Like,
pretty.
I mean,
pretty
that was
typical
the
color.
common color back then. My dad's truck, the '87 Ford, was tan.
Yeah, it's pretty common color throughout. It
That
was
really
one of the
popular those years.
It was one of the colors they used for mass production. I mean, nothing
Yeah.
fancy is what it was. Kind of like white is now.
Right.
So he would pick up these women, always women, hitchhikers. And for a long time, he would just take them where they wanted to go. He didn't hurt them.
He was building up that fantasy. He was building up the courage.
Oh, yeah. He would always take it one step further, though, with what he would say to them, what he would kind of hint around. And he said in his interviews that he could feel it building inside of him. So he knew it was going to happen. And he knew he couldn't stop it. And when he got done, he would drop these women off usually at the campus. So the campus security and the guards and stuff, they would see him coming in and out of the campus with female riders and with no complaints.
They never thought anything about it because nobody complained.
Yeah.
Nobody reported anything. I mean, he gave him a ride.
Yeah, he already had a pass, and they was used to seeing him coming in and out. And then, of course, he would go back home and he would do some masturbation type things sometimes. But he'd always wind up staring at his mother again with that same building desire to kill her. And that never went away from him. So that leads us to Mary Ann, how do you say that? Pesce? P-S-C-E?
Yeah, I would say Pesci.
Co-ed student, and May 7th of 1972, he picks her up and gives her the ride like normal. And he winds up strangling her and killing her. That's his first kill with those people, with his first co-ed kill. Do what?
We'll have to get through the killings pretty quick.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm just gonna roll through the killings right here. Marianne Pesci and Anita Lucchesi. After offering them a ride, he brought them home and photographed their corpses naked, and he performed sexual acts on their decapitated heads. This was May of 1972. Again, Marianne Pesci and Anita Lucchesi, both of them co-ed students. 4 months later, he murdered a 15-year-old.
Oh, this is the one. At this time, when all these murders are taking place, Edmund Kemper is still ordered, court-mandated order to still see, a court-appointed psychiatrist and everything. And at the time that he murders 15-year-old Aiko Ku, he is actually cleared by 2 court-appointed psychologists. As they are both like bragging on him in their reports, saying, he's no longer a danger to himself or society or anyone else. He's completely fine. We are releasing him. His court-mandated psychiatrist appointments can end. And he has her head in the trunk of his car out in the parking lot at the time this meeting takes place.
He's sitting there knowing full well that head is right there.
Just
And
in the parking lot. That's the one thing about this case that gets me every single time.
Well, there was one where he had the corpse in the trunk, and he went to the cop bar.
Yeah.
With the corpse in the trunk, and he went inside and had beers and talked to the cops about the missing co-eds.
Yeah.
So with the body in the trunk of his car right outside.
I mean, that's how manipulative and how good he was at this, at blending in and making people believe that he was not a danger at all. Like he was just this gentle giant. And
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, not 1, 2 court-appointed psychiatrists sign off on this boy while the head of his most recent victim is in the trunk of his car right outside the parking lot.
Oh yeah.
I cannot get past that.
Well, that was like I said, September of 72. So in January of 1973, he murders 18-year-old student Cindy Shaw. Again, strangulation is pretty much his go-to. He
didn't really use guns or knives or anything. It was very personal.
Well, he used some knives. He did use knives, but
for the most part, I think most of them were strangled because a knife is personal, but strangulation is way more personal.
Mm-hmm. Then 4 weeks later, he killed Rosalind Thorpe and Allison Liu. He had both given those rides at the same time. And here's the one that happens on the campus. He gets them in the car. He takes one. He knocks one of them out in the back seat.
These were the 2 at one time.
He knocks one of them out in the back seat, and he takes the other one and puts her in the trunk of the car. And he drives out of the police station or of the campus, full view of the security there. And they see him as he pulls by with the body in the back seat, but don't pay enough attention to notice. And he just drives right by with that girl there.
They had asked, like, both of these girls, I think, are unconscious at this time.
Yeah.
So he could just say the one in the back seat, especially like she passed out.
Oh, no, you're right. They was both in the car when he leaves.
Oh, he takes both of them, yeah.
So when he goes by them, they're both in the car, knocked out in the back seat. Well, when he pulls over later on and finds this deserted area, he pulls over. He gets in the back seat. He takes one of them out and puts her in the trunk so he has enough room.
And to keep her from attacking him or running away.
He then gets in the back seat. He rapes her or her corpse. He kills her first, and he rapes the corpse. And then he gets out.
So that was always a thing with him. Like he could not
perform. He slit their throat on this one and then done what he needed to do.
But he couldn't perform unless they were dead.
Right. And the girl in the trunk wakes up while all this is going on. So she's
hearing everything.
She hears all this. He goes back to the trunk, opens it up, and just starts stabbing her to death while she's still in the trunk. And then he does what he needs to do with her. He has sex with both the corpses, then he mutilates their bodies. He does all the dismemberments. That's normal for what he does.
But he usually takes the girls home to dismember them.
Yeah, he does. He takes them home. That's another thing I was going to get to. Most of the decapitated heads that he does, he would take and he would bury in the garden outside his mother's window with the faces pointed up towards the bedroom window where his mother
they could
lived.
Look at her.
Yep. And he did this because his quote is that she looked down on everyone. So he wanted him to look down on them too.
And the thing is, what's so bad is how he killed his mother, I think, just right off the bat.
Well, we'll get into him killing her first. So that was January 1973. He does 3 murders then. So at this point, you can see that he is escalating with these murders. He's getting...
I said the time frame is getting shorter between each kill.
He's getting a little more ballsy with his actions.
Brazen.
Yeah, brazen. You can tell that, once again, just like his grandmother, that bomb's about to blow.
Yeah.
So on April 1973, he finally turns his wrath on his mom, the true source of his hatred. So what he does is, again, they have the fights. She does her whole thing about talking down to him so much. He actually stands up for himself this time. She passes out, goes to bed. Well, this time Kemper walks in with a hammer, which he had done before. But he said this time he walked in with a hammer. He raised up. He struck her one time with a claw hammer. And as soon as he did, he felt the relief. He had to continue. So he bludgeons her with that claw hammer and kills her while she lays there. Finally moves forward with it. Now, after murdering her, he decapitates the head, which is per the norm. He sets her head on the mantle and uses it as a dartboard for a while.
Oh, yeah. He throws darts at it.
Yeah. And I'm sure this whole time he's saying everything he wanted to ever say to her while he's
just
doing it.
letting loose.
And this all happens throughout one night. And then once he's done with that, and again, if you got sensitive ears, here you go.
As I tune out for a second.
He performs, we'll just do this. He performs sex acts on his mother's decapitated head.
And that's not necessarily that he had any kind of sexual attraction to her. That's just insult to injury at that point.
Exactly.
It's just another way to defile her, to humiliate her, to debase her to the point, like at the same level he always felt debased by her.
Yeah, that's one of the things he said later on is that's why he did it. And he even says it wasn't sexual with his mom.
Yeah.
He said that was just to humiliate her like he humiliated him. He wanted to do that, the most damage to her that he could because of what the damage she did to him. So,
and speaking of the damage that she did to him, he actually removes her vocal cords.
Yes.
And tries to feed them to the garbage disposal, which actually I think ends up spitting them back out. And he said, even in death, I couldn't shut her up.
Yep. So he said that was
but then he calls
pure
her
poetry
best friend too.
Well, here's the thing is he kills her, and of course the sun comes up and he's looking at everything he's done. He's finally, you would think, would be finished here. But he, again, much like the grandmother and the grandfather, harking back to that, she had a friend that would come over and drink with her, and they would play cards and
was her best
things
friend,
like that.
So.
Yeah, it was her best friend, and her name was Sally Hallett.
Now he calls her, right, and says that he's planning a surprise dinner for his mother to lure her over there.
Yeah, he knew that she would eventually come over, so he calls her.
Soon. I mean, they hung out a lot.
Yeah. So he calls her and tells her, hey, come on over early. We're going to do this for Mom. So she comes over, and whenever she walks in the door, of course, he attacks her and kills her. I think he uses the hammer on her as well. He kills her as well. But not only did he kill her, but he also performed sex acts on her as well.
I mean, this, again, goes back to the paraphilia. That was just part of it. Like, it was something he had to do.
Yep. But this time, instead of the head, it was her corpse
Right.
that he performed the
I
sex
say, I
acts
don't
on.
think he really had a preference, but they had to be dead.
I think the mother was on purpose. It was her head.
Oh, yeah,
For sure.
definitely. Because, I mean, you see her face all the time
Yeah.
when she's belittling you, when she's demeaning you, when she's debasing you. You see her face when this is happening. That's what he wanted to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when he put the vocal cords in the disposal, his quote is that that seems appropriate as much as she bitched and screamed and yelled at me over so many years. And then he kind of laughs about it. So now the interesting thing here is after those murders, the murder of the mother and the best friend, he sits on it for a while, I guess reflecting. He finally gets in the car and he
He's
leaves.
going to actually flee is what he originally intended to do.
But he also knew that in fleeing, he was smart enough to realize that, well, they'll know it was me.
I said they're going to catch him. He already knew that.
So he stops at a phone booth in Santa Anica, I think. I can't
It
remember.
was a couple of towns over, I think.
He stops at a phone booth and calls the police station there and says, "Hey, it's Edmund Kemper." And they're like, "Oh, hey, Big Ed, how are you doing?"
That's what they called him. Was he got the nickname with the cops?
Yeah.
It's Big Ed. They were so friendly with him.
Yeah. So he confesses to this cop what he done, and the cop doesn't believe him.
But so he starts laughing and asks him, "Are you're playing a prank?"
Yeah. So he laughs it off. He doesn't believe Ed at this point, and Ed's telling him, he's confessing to everything. So he finally says, "Let me speak to a sergeant," and I forget his name. Let me speak to him. Let me tell him. So they transfer him to this other police officer, this detective or sergeant. And Ed's talking to him. He explains what's going on. And even that sergeant doesn't believe him. He thinks Ed's pulling his leg. So Ed tells him, just go to the house. He said, send somebody to this address where I'm at in this phone booth.
And he sits and waits at the phone booth.
He says,
after he's off the phone, he sits and
he
waits
says,
for
call
them.
these police station I'm local at now. I'm at this phone booth on this corner. You call this police station so they'll come get me. You go to the house and see mom for yourself.
Go confirm it.
So the cop finally, he's like, look, he sends some guys out to check it out, follow up on it. Because at this point, he's like, okay, this isn't a funny joke anymore.
But I say it's no longer funny now.
So they call. So he gets there, and of course, he sees what's going on. They call it in. The detective immediately calls that local branch of the police station that Ed told him to call. And when the police get there, they radio in to the dispatch. They see Ed standing in the phone booth. They stop and radio in to the dispatch and say, hey, something's up. This ain't right. There's 2 guys in there in that phone booth. Are they planning on jumping us? So the patrolmen that go to arrest Kemper see him in there, and he's so big they think there's 2 people in that phone booth waiting on him. So they call it back and they radio back into their precinct and say, this is a trap, something's wrong. So they send more backup out to get him. And of course, so when Ed gets there and he walks out of this phone booth like some steroided up Superman, they're scared. I mean, they draw down on him. They don't know what to do because this dude, again, is a monster.
I say I'd be terrified. I mean,
but here's the gentle giant part. Ed allows them to handcuff him. They stuff him in the back of the car, and he charms these guys all the way back to the place where they arrested him, to their precinct where they're booking him. And he's telling them, what he done and all this kind of stuff. And he's so charming that those cops don't believe him.
Yeah.
They're beginning to doubt it.
Like, it can't be this guy.
It can't be this guy. So anyways, they get him. They find out what's going on. They send him back to the local cops there where his mom was killed. Of course, they book him. He offers to show them where some of the body parts that he buried is to prove that he had all these other people killed. And again, the police department there are just in shock because they had no idea. They thought it was a prank until they saw those bodies. That's how convincing he was.
And now we can kind of touch on Brass's point, like had he killed his mother right off the bat. All of the co-eds, all of the girls and the women that he killed, they were substitutes for his mother.
Yeah.
He could not work up the courage yet to kill her and be done with her. I don't know. I can't even speculation wise. I think that even had he killed his mother, he might have figured out that he still liked killing and he might have still gone on. But the actual target of his rage and everything was his mother.
Yeah.
They were all substitutes. Like what he could not do to his mother, he did to them.
Right.
And that, I mean, that's just, as a woman, that's horrific. Like, okay, you're not mad at me. You're not upset with me. I didn't do anything to hurt you, but you're going to hurt me because somebody else hurt you.
Yeah.
I think that's unimaginable for me as a woman. Like that's just horrific. And I don't know. I can't really say for sure if I truly think he would have gone on after that. But that kind of person usually doesn't stop.
Yeah,
but he did stop, and that's where I kind of balk on that.
This is one of the things that's so fascinating to me about him. It's why I like him so much, or I'm intrigued by him, I guess. I hate saying the word like, but you know what I mean. Is that, like Brass says, if he would have started with his mother first, like he did with the grandparents, would that have been it? Would we be talking about 3 kills and that's done?
Right.
You know, because you could see the tension build and escalate, and it all centers around him not taking the mother out first.
Yeah, because he would stand in her room watching her sleep, and then when it got too much to handle, he would leave.
Oh, yeah.
So that does kind of make me wonder. And I mean, even now, like he's up for parole still.
Yeah,
every few years or however often they do that.
Yeah.
But
he was up for parole in July of this past year. Yeah.
But I don't know that I would be willing to release him either.
Well, we'll get into that too. But he, the fascinating thing now is that he's in prison. He's in this place in California still. The California is not prison now. He's in California medical facility in Vacayville ever since he was arrested. And he loves to talk about what he did and why he done it. He's been interviewed several times by FBI. Who are the 2 you're talking about?
Douglas and Ressler.
Yeah, the ones who are basically the
founding fathers.
The founding fathers of it. They love talking to him, and they have their own stories about it.
Like I don't think even when he recounts his crimes, he ever tried to hide anything either or manipulate them that way. He wanted them to know.
Yeah. So Ressler, he's the one that coined the term serial killer. He's the father of it, basically. And he works for FBI. It was Ressler.
It was.
And he would interview Kemper to the point that they became friends, and he let his guard down with Kemper.
Oh, this is a good story.
He would go in with Kemper in the beginning, and Kemper would be chained and shackled and chained to the table or the floor across from a table from Ressler as they interviewed. Well, Ressler.
With an E, yeah.
He becomes so comfortable with Kemper, and he says that it was a mistake and that he, at this point, is embarrassed that he done it. But
and this is like a seasoned FBI agent.
Yeah.
Like they're
Ressler,
well aware of being manipulated by people.
Yeah, Ressler, he didn't interview just Kemper. He interviewed hundreds across the country of these people.
He can recognize manipulation when they were trying to do it.
Yeah, he interviewed Bundy. He interviewed all of them. I mean,
and Bundy was a master manipulator too.
He knew these people, how dangerous they were. But yet with Kemper, because of the way he talked, the way he manipulated, the way he was so
personable.
Yeah. So convincing that by the last time Ressler went and talked to him, Kemper wasn't even chained anymore. He hadn't been chained for a long time.
I say he was not restrained in any
Not
way.
restrained at all.
They just stuck him in the room and locked the door.
The guard would come in. Ressler would come in to sit. The guard would come in and bring Kemper in, let Kemper sit down, and then the guard would shut and lock the door and stand outside the door while they interviewed. Well, the last time it happened, now Ressler did have some safety nets. He had a button that he could press that alerted the guards to immediately unlock the door and come in there to let him out.
I mean, at this point, obviously they take his gun, they any kind of weapon that he could use to defend himself.
Yeah, he didn't have any kind of weapons, which was normal, because they was afraid somebody could overpower him, and Kemper absolutely
could. Yeah,
because Wrestler was a normal sized guy. I mean, he was average sized dude, and here he is, best friends with this 6'9", at this point probably 275, 300-pound man, in a very confined room.
I'll post pictures of Kemper with some of the guards around him, because that will give you kind of the scale of his size.
So Wrestler's in there talking to him, and Kemper says something to him that throws him off. He asks, I know you don't have a weapon on you, so what's stopping me from doing whatever I want to you?
This table right now.
So, come across this now.
Mm-hmm.
So Wrestler immediately goes on guard because Kemper hadn't ever said anything to him like that before. So he gets up and he mashes the button for the guard to come in. Nothing happens. So he presses it again, and Kemper's just sitting there smiling at him across that table.
That's got to be so creepy. Just that.
I mean, here he is
grinning at you.
You got Kemper sitting down, was nearly as tall as Wrestler. So he's pressing this button for the guard, and Kemper looks at him smiling and says, "The guard's on break. They're eating lunch right now."
He knew the guard's schedule.
He said, "Nobody's coming to save you. They won't be here for at least 15 more minutes."
Yeah. And that size man, knowing what you know about him, he's just smiling at you saying, I can do whatever I want to you in the next 15 minutes. You can't do anything.
So Wrestler says, "Well, I'm armed." And Kemper says, "No, you're not."
Yeah, he knew. So
Kemper gets up and walks towards Wrestler at this point. And Wrestler's just continually mashing this button, and he's keeping distance. And they start kind of going around this table and make a whole loop around this table. Finally, the guard shows up because Kemper was taking his time, going real slow and methodical. So finally, the guard opens up the door and comes in to get Kemper. Kemper doesn't resist, doesn't do anything.
I don't think that Kemper actually had any intention of actually hurting Robert Wrestler at this point. It was just he got off on scaring the absolute hell out of him.
But the last thing that Kemper said before the guard came into the room, after he'd stand up and walked him around the table, it says, "Nothing's stopping me from pulling the head off of your body right now."
Yeah, that's absolutely terrifying to me. That is, you could not make a horror movie to scare me like that would scare me.
He just told him, says, "I could pull the head off of your body and no one could stop me."
Yeah, I mean, nobody was coming.
So eventually, shortly after that, the guard does arrive. And protocol is for them to come in and get Kemper and take him out. So Wrestler, when the guard gets there, the guard's apologizing for taking so long. Wrestler's still kind of just dumbfounded. He doesn't know what to say. So they come in and get Kemper and walk him right beside Wrestler. And Kemper reaches out and puts his hand on his shoulder as he's walking out, and the guard stops. Wrestler says his grip was to the point that I couldn't move. I could not get away if I wanted to. And Kemper said, "What's wrong? I know I was just joking, don't you?" And winks at him, squeezes his shoulder, and walks by.
I'm sorry. That's the scariest thing I can imagine. Like I said, I mean, you know me with horror movies.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a horror movie junkie. That right there, that description of that encounter, that scares me more than any horror movie I have ever seen.
Oh, yeah. Because it's real.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's why my favorite movies are the ones with the human monsters. Because this is absolutely 100% possible.
Oh, yeah.
But, oh, God, that's the worst thing I think I could ever imagine. And as much as I'm fascinated by this kind of, this subject, it's never been something I pursued, professionally, because I genuinely don't think I can handle it.
Right.
Emotionally and psychologically. I don't think I could do that.
Oh, no, absolutely. But like I said, and here's another thing, too. Kemper comes up for parole ever so often. He's serving 8 life sentences. When he was tried and convicted, he requested the death penalty but I think he did that just because he knew California didn't have one at the time.
Yeah.
So he got 8 years,
Just for show.
8 life sentences, but with the possibility of parole. Now, every time it comes up, he's been denied because they say he doesn't show the remorse, or he does something right before the parole to get mark against him.
I think he likes being in prison.
Well, he says
because
so.
He is something there. He matters. He's important, and
Yeah.
he never had that in life before.
Yeah, when he's in prison, he is a star. All the guards love him. All the inmates respect him because of his size and his story and his history. He gets attention, and he has all these perks, a television in his room. He has a nice bed. He has books to read.
I say he's a well-behaved inmate, so yes, he gets these perks that
Yeah.
nobody else usually gets.
And talking about perks here, something that I love, he does audible recordings of books.
Well, it's not necessarily audible, but back in the day when they used to record them on the cassette tapes, he recorded a lot of like classic books and everything for the deaf. And I'm still actually trying to find some of those cassettes because I want them.
Yep.
But yes, he would record the audiobooks for the deaf in America and everything. And I'm sure they probably sold overseas too. But
I would love to find some of them. I really, really would.
I mean, the interviews that we've seen, he's got a great voice. Say what you will about him for the most part and everything. He's a horrible person, but he's got a great voice. So I would love to hear some of these books.
I just out of the morbid curiosity, I guess. I mean,
well, that's a lot of it for me, but we are closing in now on the end of our second hour.
Oh yeah, I could do another hour on him just talking about him, but we'll do the in memoriam.
If you guys want to keep going, you can. We can go up to 3 hours. There's nothing behind you.
Oh, it's fine. We go ahead and shut it down.
I think we've said just about everything that there is to.
I mean,
say.
it just may be blushing and gushing over him, which would be probably disturbing to people. So
I don't think it's really disturbing. I mean, there are some that are more fascinating than others.
But if you want to look up wrestlers' books, you remember Robert Wrestler. He's got a few books out there. They're easy to find.
Hang on, I'll go grab mine.
She's gonna grab one of them. We'll give it by the name. Like I said, Kemper is one of his favorite subjects, and that's where he tells a story about when Kemper scared him so bad. But Robert Wrestler, the book is called Whoever Fights Monsters, and it's Robert K. Wrestler, Ressler, and Tom Shackman. And it's my 20 years of tracking serial killers for the FBI. I love this book. We have
completely fascinating.
We have the copy of it. Also have the audible copy of it. It does have some photos and stuff with them. It's got a picture of him with Kemper standing beside him, and Wrestler
pictures of Gacy. I mean,
Wrestler actually comes to Kemper's shoulder. His top of his head is equal with Kemper's shoulder. That's how big he is. But fascinating
book.
book.
Not a small guy. I mean, he was 6'1".
I don't know. I thought he was. But average height, so I'm assuming 5'10". But Whoever Fights Monsters is the name of the book, and I highly recommend it if you have any interest in
and just
this.
Mindhunter by John Douglas too, because he mentions Kemper a lot in that book, and that's actually what inspired the Netflix show.
Yeah.
Which I'm so upset that we don't have that last season for that.
If you do see the Mindhunter, I think it's on Netflix.
I'm mad.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that's one of the few shows like that I actually really liked, and I was really mad that it just kind of abrupt.
Yeah, I know. We got the 2 seasons, and then it just ended. But Kemper's portrayal, the actor and everything, looked. I mean, it was all dead on. He looked like him. He sounded like him.
The actor was heavier set than Kemper.
Yeah,
but otherwise, the height was right. The voice was very, very accurate.
Eerily similar.
And the mannerisms and all that stuff was excellent. Very well done. But again, it's Robert Wrestler
and John Douglas.
John Douglas. Those are their fathers of serial killers for the FBI.
I say they're the ones who coined the term. They're the ones who learned how to study them. We basically everything in criminal psychology based off of what they learned.
So if you're interested in this all, look them up, find their books, and read up on them. But my wife here is going to go through the memoriam for the victims, and I'll go ahead and hand it off to her so she can do that.
Like we always say, I mean, the killers themselves, they're fascinating. What they do intrigues us because we want to understand it, but there are very, very real people who died. These were somebody's mother, the daughter, the sister, something. Like these people actually mattered. So we'll just go right through it, starting with the first one. We'll go kind of in chronological order. So it was Maud M. Huey Kemper. She was murdered August 27th of 1964. That was his grandmother. Edmund Emil Kemper Sr., August 27th of 1964, the paternal grandfather. Marianne Pesci was May 7th of 1972, and she was a student at the university. Anita Luchessa was May 7th, 1972 also, and she was a co-ed student too. Aiko Koo was September 14th, 1972. She was the 15-year-old girl. Everybody else that Kemper murdered was in adulthood, but he did murder a 15-year-old girl, and her name was Aiko Koo. Cindy Shaw was January 8th of 1973. She was also a student. Rosalind Thorpe was February 5th of 1973. Alice Liu was February 5th of 1973. Clarnell Strandberg, his mother, was April 21st of 1973, and Sally Hallett was her best friend, and she was also murdered on April 21st of 1973.
Yep.
So we always remember the names of these people because they are the important ones here. They're the reason we do this show. They're the reason we're here. That's the reason y'all are listening, because these were very real people that lost their lives. And we always want to take a second to just remember them, say their names. That's very important to us. So,
right. Again, the fascination and for me, saying he's my favorite, I know that sounds weird, and it even sounds weird for me to say.
It's just the most fascinating to you.
Yeah, and I'm just intrigued by him. Like I said, it's the only one of the killers that I'd actually want to meet in real life, just to see for myself, because his story is so unique. But that doesn't excuse what he done. It doesn't cheapen it. Doesn't make it doesn't make it okay at all in any way. Just because I find him fascinating.
Hey, bro, it's Saturday night. It's not Man Crush Monday, bro.
Hey, I'm sorry.
I think we kind of needed that laugh there at the end. So
he's a hunk of a man.
A giant hunk of a man. My goodness.
But again, he's at this point he's 75.
Yeah, he is still alive. He is still in.
He had a parole hearing July the 9th, I think it was, of this year.
Right before my birthday. And
he was deemed unfit. Part of the reason he refuses to go to his hearings. He lays them. He says he doesn't want. He's not interested in it. But still, the way law works, he has to do it. And right before it happened, like I said, he kind of does this every time. This past time, he grabbed somebody on the butt, and when they asked him why he done it, he says, "I just wanted to lighten." No, he said, "I just wanted to lighten the mood," and just kind of laughed about it. And then, of course, they had to mark it on his record and write it up. And he does things like this before each of his parole hearings, and I think that's part of him guaranteeing that he can't get out, because he doesn't want to get out. Again, he's a superstar in this hospital. So
yeah, he has a name for himself.
Yeah, it's first time in his life. So,
and he's not in the basement. So.
He's exactly. He's not in the basement. He's got a room that's, like I said, he's got a television. He's got books. He's friends with these guards. The inmates respect him.
He's finally getting the treatment that he always wanted.
I know. As much as I hate to say this,
as messed up as it is,
Ed Kemper got his happy ending here.
Yeah.
For what he done he
Which
got what he wanted.
Me personally, I disagree with that. I think the death penalty should still be a thing. I mean, just for Aiko Koo alone, just her being 15 years old, she's our daughter's age. I mean, that's
he even requested the death penalty.
Yeah,
but
I think he did that, like you said, because he knew he wouldn't get it in California.
He knew he wasn't going to get it too. So.
He wants the recognition. He wants to live out his life being the co-ed killer.
I think in 73 when he was arrested and went to trial and everything, I don't think he wanted it then. I think as time went on, he's come to crave it and he realizes what he has.
Yeah.
So now he doesn't want out. I think when he requested the death penalty, I think he was sincere in that in the beginning.
Maybe.
Because he killed his mother. He knew he was done. Give me a death penalty. But now he's a star. And he realized early on that he was a star. And now he
a certain level of respect.
He's
nowadays.
Treated better now than he ever was.
Yeah.
So I can absolutely see why he doesn't want to leave prison or this hospital. This is basically prison. I mean,
I absolutely agree. So, where can we find you, hubby?
Oh, you can find me on the Edmund Kemper fan page. No, I'm Bump Stock Ken on X. Of course, I'm Front Porch Forensics co-host every other Saturday here on KLRNradio.com. And that's really all I do other than drive trucks and drink coffee.
And you smoke cigars. Don't forget that.
On occasion.
I am the host. I'm Laura. I'm Bump Stock Barbie. You can also find me. I write for Twitchy. The author page is in my bio. So if you want to read any of my stories, you can find it all there. Me and Daniel, we both run the Front Porch Forensics X page, which is FP_forensics on X.
But yes, really, go like and follow and stuff.
Yeah, definitely go like and follow because I post updates, and hopefully here soon we're going to start doing little short videos about like this day in true crime and stuff like that. So
if my host would listen to me and make a Linktree account, I could have a QR code with all this stuff right there.
Oh yeah, I'll get on that tonight. Then.
He listens to me, so.
But say I've got ice cookies and everything now, so
we'll work on that tomorrow for sure. Linktree,
yeah.
Okay.
So we'll have that going soon. But Rick, you take it away because you got way more going on than we do.
No, don't go find me. It's a trap. You can find me at RowdyRick73 on most social media platforms. You can follow along with the station at KLRN Radio. You can also follow along with our new news arm, which I am the news director of at Digital Beacon US. You can find me as a regular contributor on Twitchy.com, an occasional both MisfitsPolitics.com and TheLoftusParty.com, and I also produce their podcast, which drops every Tuesday. I do a daily show here on KLRN Radio every Monday through Friday, except for the first Monday of the month from 11 to 2 in God's time zone, noon to 3 for you weirdos. And I also do shows almost nightly here on KLRN Radio. Monday nights, I produce for the Ladies of the Red Wine. That starts at 8 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday nights, I lately have had that night off, so I've been hanging out with the Manorama crew because my crew gave me a night off, and I found another good podcast to go hang out on, oddly enough. Wednesday nights, full boat. Usually whatever starts at 8 p.m. Eastern. This week will be Toxic Masculinity at 9 p.m. Eastern. 8 p.m. So yeah, 8 p.m. Eastern for Toxic. 9 p.m. Eastern, we have a blank right now, so we'll be joining Behind the Enemy Lines live radio on YouTube, Rumble channel, and simulcasting it on RX feeds at the same time. 10 p.m. Eastern, I do the the Rick and Orty show. Thursday nights, usually Jen and Rick, 10 p.m. Eastern. Friday nights, back around doing He Said, She Said with Aggie Rican. Next Saturday night will be Juxtaposition, and we're starting our Rocktober early. Tomorrow night, I'll be doing America Off the Rails, and that's at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And then you guys already heard all the rest. And I'm out of breath, so I'm done talking.
Yeah.
Well, good night, y'all. I mean, we hope y'all enjoyed this one. This one, to me, so far, is, I think, my favorite one that we've recorded yet. So.
Yeah, definitely thanks for joining us. And again, you heard Rick. There's so many things out there on KLRN, so please join up on those shows, give them a listen.
And we all have merch in the store now.
Yep.
So klrnradio.com/store. You can find all sorts of stuff for us.
Oh yeah, not just Front Porch Forensics, but a bunch of other shows as well. We have some coffee mugs out, I think, and some stickers.
Oh, they're on the
Just put up a QR code. So
Yeah.
they're on the screen right now. So
Awesome.
awesome.
So please give everybody a listen. You'll find some sort of flavor that you'll love. I guarantee it. Check the store. And again, just thank you for your support, not just for us, for all of us out there. So
Absolutely. Good night, y'all.
yes, good night. Thanks again, y'all.
Away from home, they're in the woods, they're all alone. The ropes are heavy and the knots are tied by a monster and his oblivious wife. Well, I hope this doesn't seem too impolite, but Ted Bundy was just never that fucking bright. He was just sort of charismatic and white, all right, and he was so fucking sure